Hey everyone, welcome to the next episode of Ecommerce Insights. I'm your host, Scott DeGrossier, founder and CEO of Wicked Reports. I'm here with Raj Sheth today, a serial entrepreneur currently on his fourth company, Fly Data, which we're going to spend a lot of time talking about how they help people, why e-commerce companies should care, how you can use it to get an edge. They help centralize the data for analysis and make it easy for e-com companies to pull their data into one place and have insights on it without a large engineering team. How you doing, Raj? Nice to have you on the show.
Nice to be here, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Fly Data, a lot of people, everyone realizes now data is important. Now there's this whole Apple, Facebook war. So you really need to have your own data, own it, know what the heck's going on with it. So before we get into the use cases and some of the fun things that people can do once they have everything set up, take us to the foundations. Like, why is an e-commerce company going to be like, man, I need to centralize my data? And then how do you go about doing that?
Sure. So I'll actually start with a simple example of a 10 or 20 person e-commerce company. Let's say maybe they are on Shopify. They have their orders are coming into one place. Let's say Shopify, they have the inventory there, but now they're also doing ads and marketing. They are doing Facebook, Instagram ads. They're doing Google AdWords, and they may have other live chat, customer ticket systems, and what have you. And essentially, in simple words, funnily, I'm not an engineer as well. So like all the data jargon aside, it at some point it becomes important when your data or when your orders or when your business has crossed a certain limit. At some point, it becomes important to know what is working, which part of the ads are working, what type of customers are most profitable, how much do they buy, what kind of products do they buy. And we all broadly know that, hey, if I spend X on ads, I got more revenue this month. But some channels are probably bringing in your better customers and other channels are probably not working so well. So how do you make sense of all of this in one place? And very simply, this is why a company eventually has to figure out one source of truth, a dashboard where all the data is flowing into.
Now, that speaks our language. We do tracking, extensive tracking ourselves. The data warehouse piece is tough, or there's a lot of disparate systems, like even for orders. You got Shopify, but then you also got PayPal and then Google Pay. And, I'm forgetting a couple. There's always like 4 to 6 ways people are taking payment. So,
Sure.
how big is your stack of integrations you connect to, and how do you add-on ones for people?
Yeah, so currently what we've started helping e-commerce and other companies do is bring all their sources in one place, all of them, right? And a lot of the connectors, the Fly Data product already has. And if we don't have certain connectors, we'll actually help them use other things to stitch it up. So we are also providing a service right now for a lot of people that don't know about like the tools they should be using. But more importantly, I also keep getting a question that what's a data warehouse? Why do I need to use it? And what ends up happening is, let's say that I'm getting 2 orders a day. I'm like a one-person operation. I'm getting 2 orders a day. Of course, and maybe I have had 100 orders total in the last 2 years. Then, of course, I don't need to worry about data warehouse and things like that. But what ends up happening is, if I'm on the higher end of that spectrum, and if I'm doing 50 to 100 orders or 500 to 1,000 orders a day, what ends up happening is, if you try to query or try to do analytics on your main transactional database, every business has some database, whether it's behind Shopify or what have you, then it will take you hours and hours. It'll take you like 9 hours to run that query, because that's a transaction database. It's not meant for analytics. And a data warehouse, as the name suggests, it's a warehouse. So that's why it's built for you to store your data, so you can pull the exact things you need in 9 seconds versus 9 hours. So very simply, that's a data warehouse. And to answer your question, we help them bring all the data, including the payments information that you talked about, whether it's PayPal or Stripe or other things, into one place, into a data warehouse.
Well, I'm a data warehouse aficionado. I don't know if Ralph Kimball was like the godfather, I feel, of designing the right schema. I used to go take his courses and it was like fun for me. I'd be like, oh, I get to spend a week just learning data. I was like many years ago.
You know this stuff.
You've seen in a lot of use cases, so you probably have some templated places to start. How do you help people pull in the right data, but then also have the right structure in the data warehouse to help them get the answers they want out the other end?
Sure. That's a great question. And this is where what happens is a lot of people push their raw data to a data warehouse like Amazon Redshift, Google BigQuery, Snowflake, what have you. And then they basically transform it. So transform it, meaning they make it analytics ready. They decide what they want to pull. And that's essentially the part where if we understand the end goals of what you want to see, we can help you decide what you want to pull from your raw data. So let's take an example. I want to know my return on ad spend on a certain product category, or I want to know the lifetime value of a customer for this product, or I want to know what's my leading product that leads to more sales, for example, in a given year, etc. If I just have those end states or those desires written down in terms of analytics, then we can essentially pull maybe like the customer email is the common thread which runs across my order system, my payment system, and let's say where that visit may have come from the ads. And we can make sure that that's a common entity and we have those joins, running across those databases. So you don't need to struggle with, hey, something changed and I need to redesign it. You just need to essentially worry about, hey, these are the things that I need to see. And most of the time, folks that are analyzing the business just need to see it on a dashboard.
So let's talk about some of, you mentioned product category. I want to shift gears just a touch. Product analytics. Because a lot of times you could pull in a lot of data on the product and it may or may not really move the needle. But what have you found? Where should people focus when it comes to product data? Because that's the area that the e-com people are really into, but there's a lot of rabbit holes you can go down. Where do you find people get the most ROI for their time spent in that data?
Yeah, that's a good point, because at the end of the day, why are we doing all of this? We're not getting some medals just to, put a whole bunch of data in a neat form, right? We're doing this to make decisions, and we're doing this to, for example, I'll actually draw on the experience. I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but the irony is before I knew all this stuff, I used to run an e-commerce business, which failed for other reasons, not because I didn't know how to look at my data, but it failed for a whole bunch of reasons. This was 10 years ago. And at the time, talking about product categories, I kind of wanted to see things like, hey, what are everybody that converted, what were they clicking on and what were they looking at? Like, did they look at multiple categories? This was a jewelry site. So were they just looking at rings before they made a purchase? Were they also looking at some other stuff which they never bought, etc.? So I kind of wanted to see what they added to the cart and never bought. I kind of wanted to see what led them to go to a second product category purchase. I wanted to see if they searched for something but then didn't end up buying that product category, which means like we didn't have an adequate collection there. So it sort of, in many cases, it should or it ought to inform where I should focus on in terms of like, what are the next sort of things that we want to put. For example, we're working with an organic skincare company right now, and they just realized that everybody's crazy about this toothpaste that they are making, right? and that was just like a seasonal thing and it went away, but and they had missed it. It had done well. The inventory was over and they were happy. And they realized that was their best selling product. And also why, like, they had used some very specific ingredients. So not only did they bring that back as the main product, but now they're using those ingredients in some other things, etc. So now they also do an ingredient level search and not just what people are clicking on.
That's deep. I didn't know that. I've gone through a fair share of organic toothpastes and it's frustrating. They're not very good. So I'd be looking for this recommendation. Like the idea of it. And the ingredients matter. That's interesting. That's something again, I didn't know. But as a consumer on the other end, I was like, all right, well, does it have charcoal in it? Like that's an organic toothpaste thing.
Sure. More and more these days, because people are looking for such specifics online.
What about inventory? You do anything with inventory at all? And how does it help people?
Yeah, I mean, now people, so there is the basic stuff that people do. They obviously, have an inventory management system. As purchases are happening, they keep an accurate track of it at both ends, sometimes at the drop shippers end, if they have like an OEM manufacturer, and then the company itself. But the more interesting things that I've seen with inventory is they try to get ahead of seeing certain patterns that, hey, we're kind of seeing, these kind of sales happen, or so we should like stock more of this, or we have data from the last holiday season and we saw that we sold out of all of these, but we still had more site traffic and the product had disappeared, so we should stock more of that. So being able to like predict some of these things, and again, I don't want to get into the fancy words like ML, AI, machine learning, and all of that. But some of the interesting things that I'm seeing there in plain English is that, see, the ability to get noisy, unclean data and then be able to tell something from it, I think is very exciting, because otherwise it's all just like a theory class where, we can explain to each other, but like, how do you make it happen? Like, well, when I have my store, etc., what am I supposed to do? Who's supposed to help me, etc.? But I think if people, have already set up the data stack, there is potential to do more and more with inventory. Maybe right now it's not super fancy, it's basic, but like to be able to predict exactly what I'll need to make for the next quarter, what I'll need to stock would be very powerful, especially with sites that have lots and lots of SKUs, right? Sites that are selling like voluminous amount of things, like that's probably the number one thing there. That's the mother load.
No, I asked because I wouldn't have thought it was that important, but we've had some Wick Reports customers that done so well that they've run out of stuff.
Yeah.
So, hey, why is your ad spend down? You guys were killing it. Well, I'm running out of stuff to sell.
Yeah.
So that's where inventory analytics, maybe they could have got ahead of that and seen it coming, or project it out. I don't know. Every case is different, but it's surprising that, in the world today, the resources to make your products are actually in such demand that you can be costing yourself business because you're not on top of inventory, which wouldn't have been the case a couple of years ago. Sure.
And especially if everything happens to you once, you should be able to catch it the second time. That's the thing. At least that's the simple thing with data, right? Like, this happened to me once, I ran out. That's great, actually. I ran out, I should celebrate it. But now the second time, hopefully I can anticipate it because I already have that, that pattern in now.
So I saw on the Flywheel site that you guys also did finance analytics. How does that, what are the top, because I come from SaaS world, so we dig in our finances a lot, but with e-com, what do you find really moves the lever for people there?
You mean which metric does?
Yeah, which metrics in finance? Is it all about COGS, or is it how much am I making on shipping, or can I do a loss here because I'm going to get a gain on the back end when I upsell them XYZ? Like, I have all these theories, but what do you set up for people to drive for the insights?
Yeah, so I'll tell you what I hear from them directly. So the 2 or 3 recurring things are, one is the return on ad spend, the ROAS, right? Like and especially for the funded e-commerce companies, the e-commerce companies that have raised, venture capital, institutional capital, they are tracking return on ad spend. And then they, of course, they're tracking it on a transaction level, but they also see, hey, if I got a customer, what was my cost of conversion, right? My CAC, what was my cost of conversion on this customer? And let's say it was, I don't know, $10 or $20. Mm-hmm. Now they kind of keep tracking how much is that customer buying over 1 year, right? And so that gives them sort of not a lifetime value, but they keep tracking it quarterly, annually, that, hey, this person came back and bought 3 times. And then essentially they bought a total things for $100. And then the next thing they want to know is, what was my gross margin on that customer, right? So they came 3 times this year, bought for $100, and my cost on that was $50. So roughly, I had $50 gross margin, cost me $10 to acquire that customer. Mm-hmm. So these are the 2 or 3. And now again, depending on the kind of e-commerce, there are so many specific use cases, but this is very universal that we see across the board.
What do you use as your source for the attribution numbers? Are you using the ad platform conversion numbers?
Yeah, and that's where it becomes important to have them all. So it is Google Analytics, it is the ads, Google AdWords, it is Facebook, it's all of them. And of course, depending on what source they came from. So we kind of get all those 3 or 4 sources to one place, and then we kind of know the source of truth.
That's where we need to talk off recording, because so that's what we exist, because that data is sometimes, depending on the setup, the Facebook or Google can be kind of optimistic, or they'll ignore email sales. So you got to vet out with algorithms who really deserves credit, because we now have an outbound API. So maybe we can be a fly data connector. We'll see.
Yeah. And by no means is it all squared away and the attribution is clean. I mean, of course, this is like a prerequisite starting point, but it's usually even our own attribution for fly data. I'd be lying if I said I know, even though we do this stuff, our attribution is out of whack sometimes.
Yeah.
We can't track it.
We hear that a lot. That's why we have a good business. It's tough. But that being said, all these different pieces, they all affect the success of e-com. You can get pristine attribution, but then if your inventory analytics are out of whack, you run out of stuff, you don't make money. Or if you're selling the wrong product and it's the one that doesn't have the high lifetime value customers, then you got all these one and dones, and then your ROAS isn't high enough for you to scale the ad spend. So a lot of that scale comes from the repeat buyers from the initial acquisition. So it all plays a part. How do you help people? So do they already have to have, so if they come to you, do they have a person you're going to train up on consuming the data, or are you guys going to be an ad hoc consulting? Are you flexible on that? How does that work?
Yeah. So exactly. So we've seen both now. So what happens is sometimes in a slightly larger company, there will be a CTO, or let's say a head of technology. In the really larger ones, we start seeing a data team, like head of data and analytics, etc. And there we show them how to consume the data, as you said. But in the slightly smaller ones, we are the ones that are setting this stuff up for them, all the way to the dashboard. So these folks, for example, are not logging into setting up Redshift, Amazon Redshift. They're never logging in there, but they are essentially just looking at the dashboard. And though that is also informed, since we are focused on e-commerce, that's also informing our future roadmap, because we get to learn at close quarters what are all the exceptions and what are all the problems that these guys are having. So depending on the size of the company, either there is, an engineer technical person who just uses fly data, so they are the ones driving, or in the smaller ones, we set it up for them.
So walk me through so I'm an e-com company of 10 people. I got one person that knows the way around a spreadsheet. Walk me through the process of how I get set up. I sign up, pay you, and then what happens?
Let's take the example where we are setting it up for you. We pretty much walk you through an onboarding where we will know all your sources. Let's say you have a MySQL, transactional database, and you have 3 ad sources, you have a payment, let's say 2 payment systems, and you have all of that other stuff. And so you have about 10 sources of data, right? We pipe that all into a data warehouse, and we will figure out what should be the right one for you. We are vendor agnostic. So it's not like we are the data warehouse. So now you have 2 or 3 options, Amazon, Google, Snowflake. And so we'll kind of share the pros and cons in terms of if you have a budget, if you're already on AWS and other things. And we will get all that data piped into data warehouse. And before that, we would have also understood from you your goals that, hey, this is what I want to see, and these are the gaps. This is what I've not been able to see in Excel, and this is where my queries are broken when I've tried to do them directly on my MySQL. And then there are 6, 7, 8 visualization dashboard tools that will sit on top of Redshift or your other data warehouse, meaning they're taking data from that. And we will figure that out with you too. There are some super, sophisticated ones, but then there are also you're able to sort of rely on it and do the filters and querying yourself. That's your data stack.
What's your favorite front end chart tool?
So I'm playing around with mode.com right now a little bit,
Okay.
but since a lot of people, I don't want to play favorites to any tool.
That's fine. I've always really liked high charts, but it takes some manipulation.
Okay.
I haven't been
Okay.
manipulating charts in a long time, but
Yeah. I haven't used high
was
charts.
nice.
Yeah.
What about now? So you pipe the data in, then what about the modeling of the warehouse piece? Is that where they're going to first, you just going to connect the raw sources in and let them join it around and then warehouse it after?
No, we will, in this first example, we will do that as well. So we'll kind of understand the sources and the data from you, and we would do the joins and the transforms as well. We'll do that for you because we are again assuming in the first case that you kind of know what you want as an output, but you don't know how to do that stuff. So
how long does that end-to-end take then to where I've got my warehouse built, optimized, queries are fast, I like my charts? So that's it.
I think
it depends, right?
Yeah. No, I think if our assumptions are clear, if we know what we want, it's many of the times it's been just a couple of days.
Really?
So I would say it's
That's
2 to
impressive.
5 days. 2 to 5. But keep in mind again, we're using a lot of these tools, right? Like setting up Redshift. Yes, like if you have huge amount of tables and we figure out the schemas, but if you have huge amount of tables, the initial sync might take a little bit of time, but it's still within a work week. It's 2 to 5 days.
That's impressive. I can see a lot of little mini projects I might want you guys to help us with. I'm serious.
I'd love to.
I'm serious. That is impressive. Even if it's like 2 weeks, it's still really fast. Good work. Shifting gears a little. So you're a 4-time entrepreneur. I'm a 3-time. And so like my first one was a meditation membership site. And it was 2007. So this wasn't like apps, right? So my whole problem was the delivery mechanism. You pay for a meditation, you got to download it somehow to your computer, then you got to get it onto a device, then listen to it and repeat that process. People don't like to do that. So I just couldn't scale it and I didn't know a way around doing it. And then I ran out of money. And then my second one was an IT custom services. So it's basically programmers. You come in, I need an app built for my organization. We did some pretty big companies, Fortune 500, 1000, but it wasn't fun. It was like someone would say, hey, I need this report, I pipe this date. And I just didn't have a passion for it. So then I hit gold on this third one. 4X, and I know you had a success and you had a failure in there. Talk about, not many people strike it like Zuckerberg. I have an idea and now I'm a billionaire. So just tell us a little about your past, about some of these other startups. It's always interesting to hear how people got to where they were.
Sure. The first one, actually, I'll tell you the 0 one before the 4 because it's a fun one. I went to school at Babson outside of Boston.
Oh, I went to Bentley, my rival.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Oh.
I almost went. I got into Babson, and I think Bentley gave me more aid, so I had to go there.
That's a good reason. Good reason. So, funnily, at Babson, it was super entrepreneurial and all that. Like in freshman year, they kind of split the classes and give you a little bit of money to build an actual product and do a student business. Anyway, the next couple of years at Babson, I had a website that delivered food from restaurants that didn't deliver themselves. And we were in Wellesley, you know the place.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't like a company or anything. It was a student business, but we kind of ran it for a couple of years. And we used to get a 30% cut from the restaurant menu. So we kind of keep the prices the same. And we consolidated this to one delivery. So it was just a late night service, like when the meal plan and all of that was shut and your options were only Domino's or whatever, right? So like
that'd be brisk.
Just like 10:30 delivery. So funnily, I sold that business for a couple of $1,000s when I graduated to a student. I only got $1,000 and then they said they would give me the rest, and actually never saw that money. But that was like my first acquisition. $1,000. So that was the 0, right? Now I will not call that one the failure. But then, cut to 2006 after I'd worked in a job for 3 years. Real quick, I did 2 B2C companies over the next 4.5 years, and they both failed. So that was company 1 and 2. The second one was the e-commerce one. The first one was a Craigslist kind of classifieds portal for India. I was like, hey, this Craigslist is awesome. Like I sold all my furniture here in Boston. let me try it in a different market. It failed. And then the e-commerce site was, you've heard of Blue Nile? I hadn't heard of Blue Nile at the time, funnily, but I knew Blue Nile is where jewelry manufacturers directly put their products. So the platform doesn't hold any inventory. And then it cuts out any retailers or stores. It was direct to consumer. I didn't know what the hell I was doing actually back then. So even though I spent a lot of time on it. So that failed. The classified side actually had transactions happening, but I never figured out a revenue model. I never figured out how to make money on it. So it wasn't sustainable. And so the third one was RecruiterBox, the product that I was studying about. We helped small and growing companies manage their hiring in one place and manage interview notes, take decisions. It was a lightweight applicant tracking system. That's the one we ran for almost 7 years. We had 3,000 companies all over the US using the product. We had a wonderful team of 55 people. And then we were acquired by private equity in 2018, end of 2017, early 2018.
Nice.
And the fourth one is Fly Data. When just learning, and now onto this one.
Yep. That's fun. I often think back to that meditation one when I see like Calm or Headspace is worth $1 billion. You're probably the same with DoorDash. Like I basically was doing DoorDash.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just those little things that you can't quite see when you're in it, or competing pressures, or your age, you get antsy. It's nuts. That's really cool. That the ordering. Babson, they have such a good entrepreneurial curriculum. Like, they're just supporting you learning how to be an entrepreneur. It's pretty rare. Bentley didn't do that. Bentley, I was finance. I was a trader. So I was into trading, and they're really into trading there. So one of the classes you got graded on how much you grew an account trading currencies. So that's all I needed to hear. I wanted to go there. I was like, I get to get graded for trading. I'm in. That was my best class. Yeah. So man, this was fun. Where can these e-com companies find out more about you?
I think the easiest thing is email Raj, R-A-J, raj@flydata.com. And then if you just, plug in Raj and Flydata and LinkedIn, you'll find me there as well. And email would be best. And I am, if anybody now is brave enough to get out and want to get coffee and happens to be in San Francisco, let me know.
All right. Thanks a lot. Thanks for your time. Great episode. I'm sure Ecom will get a lot from this. Raj Sheth, everyone. Bye-bye.